Good morning, friends and enemies. A week ago, I went through my top 12 ranked rookies, the Superflex format, and I gave you 3 comps for each player to hopefully get you a little bit more invested in the rookie class and maybe understanding the fantasy impact that these players could have. I gave you a high-end comp. So I gave you the pop comp, I gave you a middle comp, and then I gave you the flop comp. So best case, middle case, worst case. And some of the comps were player styles, right? Like being stylistically similar. Some of them were just like the impact I think they would have on your fantasy league. You guys really liked that video and you asked me to make round 2. So today we are going through my 13th through 24th ranked rookie, giving you high-end comps, middle comps, and low-end comps. You know, and typically in those videos, I know it's very hard for people to give bad comps to players, right? And give low-end comps to players because everyone just sees the good in players. And here's the truth of the matter is, like, the higher you get in rookie drafts, the less likely it is for a player to bust. I had, players that were comped to Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel, Elijah Mitchell in that first round, and those were not good fantasy players. They might have had a spark or two throughout their career, but overall, to use the first-round rookie pick on any of those guys, you came away disappointed. Now, as we go down the list, right, like a first-round pick, honestly, probably has a hit rate of about 40%, maybe 45%. They're not that good. Most NFL players do not become like a huge fantasy impact player. The higher you go up in the first round, right, like 101s have a much better hit rate than the 109, etc. But for all intents and purposes, so we don't have to fucking yap forever, as we get down to round 2, the hit rate goes significantly lower. Round 3 and round 4 also does it, right? And only a handful of players are going to come out of each round with these high-end comps. So again, don't take my words and put them in the court of law against me. I'm just laying out what I see here, and we're going to have a lot of bad player comps today, all right? So it's only getting worse. You asked for this, not me, and I'm just doing it to you. So if you missed last week's, if you missed round 1, if you missed my rankings from 1 to 12 and want to see the comps for those players, that will be linked first thing in the show notes. So we'll get to 13. I do want to just recap really quickly the top 12. So if I don't mention someone and you're like, why is he not there? It's because he was in last week's video, all right? We have Ashton Genty at 1, Cam Ward at 2, Amarian Hampton at 3, Tet McMillan at 4, Tyler Warren at 5, Shedeur Sanders at 6, Trayvon Henderson at 7, Quinshon Judkins at 8, Caleb Johnson 9, Matthew Golden 10, Travis Hunter 11, Emeka Egbuka at 12. So we dive into the 13th ranked player on my board. That is the Missouri wide receiver, Luther Burden III. All right. So my high-end comp for him is DJ Moore. My middle-end comp is Golden Tate. And my flop comp would be Laviska Shenault. There are so many varying opinions on Luther Burden, mainly because his 2024 season and 2023 season were so different. He had a monster 2023 season and then had a significant fall off statistically last year. Now, I think it's really easy to watch a tape and kind of blame that on the game plan, blame that on how he was used, a lot around the line of scrimmage, bad quarterback play, all that stuff. Regardless, at the end of it, like when I think of the stylistic play of Burden, I think he's a good route runner. I don't think he's great by any means. I don't see constant separation. I see a lot of his plays come from, zone success over the middle of the field. I don't think he's a guy that just like destroys man coverage or press coverage or anything like that. So he's a guy where I think a team could lean on him as a number 1 in the same way that, DJ Moore has progressed into like a real number 1. And he was always good in Carolina, but, he kind of recently came into his upside. So I do think a guy like Burden, who is great with the ball in his hands, right? Great after the catch, strong point catcher of the ball, but I still want to see a lot more upside in terms of the route running. So when I think of Luther Burden, he can go anywhere from like the wide receiver 1 of a team, DJ Moore, down to a complimentary like Golden Tate, who's great with the ball in his hands and can be a tough slot wide receiver, down to a Laviska, who was like a project that we're hoping becomes this athletic specimen. And, I could see Burden kind of going any of these ways. Next up, we've got Coltston Loveland, the tight end out of Michigan. He is just like a pure pass catcher. So I put his high-end comp as Darren Waller, a guy that, you use as a big body target wide receiver. If he has a top 3 fantasy tight end season, no one's going to be surprised. I have Dallas Goedert as a mid comp, whereas Goedert, and that might seem kind of lofty for a mid comp, but at the end of the day, like Dallas Goedert really hasn't put together a ton of like great fantasy seasons. He's been fine for the most part, kind of like flirting with that low end tight end 1 number, but hasn't really shown a bunch of upside, but definitely a plus pass catcher and regardless of what offense he's going to be in. And then my flop comp was Mike Gesicki, who is just more athlete than receiver. And again, like Gesicki's had glimpses of good play. He's had a good year here or there where he hits 700, 800 yards receiving, low touchdown numbers, coming off like a nice little mini breakout in Cincinnati, got the re-signage. But this is more stylistically, like this could just end up being an all upside. We are banking on the receiver ability. We are banking on the athleticism of Colston Loveland, who doesn't really develop into a 3-down tight end that really like impacts our offense and never really becomes, the first or second or usually not even like third option in the passing game. Can make big plays because that's the nature of who he is as a player, but probably not game planning around him. Next up, my 15th ranked player is Dylan Sampson, the undersized running back out of Tennessee. Now, I have his high-end comp as Devon Achane. He is a fucking blazer. When this man hits the hole and there is opportunity for him, no one's going to be as fast as Devon Achane, but stylistically similar. The reason that I like both of them as similar players is when Achane came out, I made a full video on Achane and how I thought he was a much better in between the tackles runner than he was getting credit for because of his speed. That's the way I feel about Sampson. Sampson is a high-end speed guy. I think he runs in between the tackles phenomenally well. Really, really big fan of his game. I think he can be a 3-down back if asked to be. The middling comp I have, and this is definitely like a high-end comp for him, that's James Cook. And James Cook, I think you can look at him like the first couple of years where, they never really let the reins off of him to be that high-end fantasy running back. And he's obviously benefited from being behind Josh Allen, benefited from the amount of scoring opportunities that he got. And I think Dylan Sampson can hit a really high-end range if put in the right opportunity. But on his own, he's just going to be a good running back for a team that's likely going to be part of a committee because he's a little bit undersized, but has that breakaway ability at any given point. So again, think about when I say James Cook is a middle comp, I mean more like maybe year 1, maybe year 2, where like you're kind of not sold on him yet because of the situation around him, but you're pretty sure he's a good running back at the NFL level. And then lastly, we have Tyjae Spears, who, we're yet to see it come to fruition. Day 2 capital, not really as explosive, but ends up being kind of pushed aside as the 1B in an offense, and we're not even really sure where he's going to end up despite having a lot of hype coming out. Moving to number 16, Cam Skattebo, Arizona State bruiser, the demolition man, high-end comp Michael fucking Turner. And if you're too young to know what Michael Turner was doing in his early years in the Atlanta Falcons uniform, go look at those stats. He was awesome. He's not known for being a blazer, but he was running dudes over and breaking big plays. So I think there's a chance that Cam Skattebo, and Turner was in a Chargers uniform for the beginning parts of his career and didn't really break out to what we know Michael Turner to be until he got to Atlanta and had massive seasons. So I could see Skattebo going down that range. I will say he's a better pass catcher than Michael Turner was. I think he can be a high volume pass catcher in an offense. And my mid comp for him is Chris Carson. Chris Carson just runs fucking angry. I think he just won the job outright because he's talented. He had a level of power, contact balance, running with explosiveness when he got the hole. I think he was an underrated pass catcher, not his specialty by any means. But I do think Cam Skattebo, Chris Carson had, 1 or 2 really nice seasons where he was super fantasy relevant, but over the long period just didn't have NFL type of durability because of the way he ran and because how fucking angry he was all the time. All right. And then my low end comp would be actually players like Mike Davis or Mike Tolbert, where, they might find themselves in situations where they're like called upon to be big playmakers, but Davis and Tolbert were good all around. Like that's the thing about Skattebo where I really like him regardless of where he goes because he can play on all 3 downs. Because he's so good in the passing game, he can be kept on the field and he's such a tough runner in between the tackles. So like I find myself seeing a lot more ways that he can succeed and stay relevant than I see him flopping. And I think, Mike Davis and Tolbert's kind of like a fullback, but he had double-digit touchdown seasons in his career. Mike Davis was a dude who kind of just hung around and was the guy here and the guy there and filled in as a good backup, but can kind of do all and has size to do so. So given Skattebo's skill set, if he was not a good pass catcher, I would have a ton of skepticism about Skattebo and whether or not his like legendary college type traits translate to the NFL level, but I do think he's got a really nice floor because of his skill set. Next up, we got Trey Harris out of Ole Miss, 17th ranked player. My high-end comp for him would be Michael Crabtree. My middle-end comp is Michael Gallup, and my low-end comp would be Treylon Burks. So with Crabtree, I think he's just a really good possession receiver. He's not like overly athletic. I think we look at Trey Harris. When I first started watching Trey Harris, and I went on Twitter, I was seeing, because he went to Ole Miss, it was like the A.J. Brown type of comps. And then Trey Harris came in at like 6'2", 205, so he doesn't have that imposing size. He also ran, I think, like a 4.54 in that range, 4.53. Maybe I'm off by a tenth of a second, just kind of doing this entire video. Almost one take right off the top of the head. Shout out me, shout out Adderall, shout out Tony for not having to edit this video. Trey Harris is a good athlete with good size. and can be a really nice possession receiver. And that's what Michael Crabtree was. And Michael Crabtree had plenty of really good years that warranted wide receiver one ability. I do think Harris feels like a dude. He's like a later breakout guy. He's one of those guys where I want to bet on the upside for sure. But if he flops, if he comes in and becomes an absolute dud at the NFL level, I really won't be surprised whatsoever. And that was kind of the same way I felt about Treylon Burks, who is my lower tiered comp for him. But Gallup was a really, really promising young receiver that never became the one in Dallas, but he did have an 1,100-yard season, got a really nice contract extension, but tore his ACL and was really never the same after that. But I do think he showed some promise as like a boundary possession receiver at points throughout his career. And then Treylon Burks, obviously, just ultimate flop there. 18, Jaden Higgins, wide receiver, Ohio State, 6'4", 210, ran the 4.47 40. I thought he was really smooth in and out of his routes. Not always a consistent route runner, but I thought he had really good body control, controlled it really well in the boundaries when you kind of like threw him a ball up there to go get it. I thought he ran really good routes like over the middle, and you can kind of hit him on that like 15 to 17 yard in route. So I put his high end comp as T. Higgins. I put his middle comp as Marvin Jones, who, had really good years, but for the most part, I feel like you kind of took shots at him downfield and you let him use his wiry frame to go up and get it. And, he posted a couple big touchdown years, a couple 1,000-yard receiving years. So not always like a perennial, top 15 fantasy receiver, but for the most part, he's getting drafted as like a top 30 wide receiver guy because of the big play possibility. And then my flop comp for Jaden Higgins was DPJ, Donovan Peoples-Jones, where it's like, you kind of feel like the tools are there. You might have liked him coming out of college, but at the end of the day, he's not a serious route runner. He's kind of got like one specialty, and if it doesn't fit the offense or if he doesn't get the opportunity to show it, he's kind of just going to fade into non-existence. And I, without a doubt, again, like as much as I like Jaden Higgins and I've been talking about him, anyone that's picked in the second round has a very, very low hit rate of hitting their ceiling. So these are guys that, if they flop, I have no surprise coming my way. I'll be disappointed. And that's where we lead to Jaxson Dart at number 19, because his flop comp is Will Levis, his middle end comp is Carson Wentz, and his high end comp is Sam Darnold. And I mean previous Sam Darnold, like recent year, this Minnesota Sam Darnold, where put in the great position, he obviously dominated and had the best year of his career. If he's put in a bad situation, probably not going to be great. But you look at Darnold, you look at Wentz, you look at Will Levis, where they're not athlete first, but they're all athletic and can move around if asked to. They have pretty fiery arms, not always consistent, a little bit erratic in play, have some clear ups and downs in their games, but if in the right situation, probably can put it together for maybe, a long period, unlikely for a long period. Next up, my 20th ranked player is Damien Martinez, the running back out of Miami. My high-end comp for him, James Conner. My middle end comp is Chris Ivory, and my low end comp is Jordan Wilkins. You can see he's kind of got an archetype. He's, a 217, 220-pound back that runs angry, but I think he's got more stylistically similar game to a James Conner, where James Conner you can leave on the field for 92% of the snaps because he can play all three downs. He can make you miss through contact balance, through power, through subtle shiftiness, subtle. So I always say subtle. I don't know why I throw the B in there. I know why I throw the B in there because I'm saying it like a normal fucking American word would be, and then the English language just makes a B silent. Makes no sense. It's a subtle B in the middle of subtle. I progressed. Damien Martinez, subtle wiggleness, all right? Really big fan of his game. Chris Ivory had good years, ran angry, never really progressed to like the RB1 in a backfield. And then Jordan Wilkins was just a big cone, a big fucking cone in that Indianapolis backfield for a while. Didn't really bring anything to the field. And to be honest with you, the way I feel about Damien Martinez's talent, the only way I see him like completely flopping out, which is definitely a possibility, is him going like day 3, talking about round 5, 6, 7, and just never really getting a shot in a backfield. And then he flames out. Could see it happen, but I do think if he gets an opportunity, man, I'm going to be fucking hyped. Moving down to 21, bhayshul Tuten, the running back out of Virginia Tech. I have his high-end comp, and I'm probably a little bit too low here, but Elijah Mitchell, all right? Elijah Mitchell, early on, when Elijah Mitchell like took the 49ers backfield over, he was awesome. He was really fun. And even coming out of the combine, if you guys remember this, Mitchell was like 205, ran a sub 4.4. He was like, I think it was like a 4.38 or something like that. And that's what bhayshul tuten did. I mean, to a higher degree, ran a 4.32. But you're talking about these dudes whose straight line speed is legit, who are pretty good in between the tackles runners. Mitchell obviously got sidelined with a bunch of injuries, so he never really saw his career progress. But early season or early career Elijah Mitchell, when he took over that Niners backfield, was really enticing and a really, really fun player, easy to root for. And I think that's where Tuten is. Pierre Strong was another really explosive athletic back coming out of college that never really panned out. And then Corey Grant was like a Jacksonville guy who was almost like just an explosive specialist. You got him 6 carries a game and you hope he took one for like 40 or 50 yards. You just hope you don't draft somebody that has that type of downside. 22, we got Isaiah Bond, the wide receiver out of Texas. My high-end comp for him would be Darnell Mooney. And maybe that sounds disappointing, but Mooney's at this point, like, he's a speedster. He's a good route runner, great hands. He's put together multiple 1,000-yard seasons. And, going into 2025, his outlook is really strong. Like, he should be the number 2 receiver to Michael Penix there behind Drake London, and I wouldn't be surprised if he puts up another 900 or 1,000 yards. So talking about a really good career outlook there for a guy who, doesn't ever become the alpha outside of like extraordinary Chicago Bears circumstances where it was like him or fucking Kevin White. But besides that, a really nice complementary piece who stretches the field and could be a relatively high volume guy. So I like Bond. Tutu Atwell, nice complimentary piece for the Rams. Ridiculous draft pick by them earlier on. They re-signed him. But yeah, he's been a complimentary player who's had plays here and there. And then low-end comp, I had KJ Hamler. Fun player out of Penn State. Absolutely flew on the field, but did nothing at the NFL level. And that's always, the scary part with these speed guys is like if they're not in the right situation where a coach learns how to use them and then they don't take advantage of the opportunities, like things can go south super duper quickly here. My 23rd ranked player is Jalen Noel, wide receiver out of Iowa State. My high-end comp for him would be Tyler Lockett. I think he's got like the subtle shiftiness in his routes to be a great route runner. Lockett, I think, is a better outside receiver. Noel has ran the high majority of his routes from the slot, which is why I put his mid comp as Elijah Moore and then his flop comp as Devin Duvernay. Duvernay was a fun prospect coming out of Texas. He was explosive, but just never developed as a receiver. Was a really good return guy, a really good special teams guy. Elijah Moore, way more hope than actually production here on the NFL level. Had glimpses for sure. Relatively explosive, but always stayed in the slot. You could put him outside as like a gadget guy, but we saw that never really worked at the NFL level. But Lockett was a long-standing receiver who people didn't know what they were getting initially, but he developed into a phenomenal route runner, a guy that could be relatively high volume and stay around for a while. And I think Noel's got that like quick twitch separation ability that could end up being, Tyler Lockett-esque. And the number 24 ranked player, there's a lot of guys I could have put here. I ended up putting Jack Bech here, the wide receiver out of TCU. And my high-end comp for him was actually Juju Smith-Schuster. And this was more of a stylistically similar player. Juju, year 1 and year 2 was something else, right? Like year 2, I think he had 1,400, 1,500 receiving yards. He was damn near like the Dynasty wide receiver 1 in like the market at that time. If you didn't play Dynasty, like Juju was like Julio levels of value in the fucking market. It was insane. But think about Juju and his play style, much better in the slot, really tough hands, really tough over the middle, like a bigger sized receiver, 215, 220 in that range. And he plays that fucking size. Juju at his peak he was not to be fucked with. He was a very good receiver, fun to watch, running over dudes. Like he took no shit over the middle of the field. Those Steelers AFC North rivalries were fucking sick when Juju was on the field. Juju, good after the catch. Underratedly really good after the catch. And I think all of what I just said right there is kind of like the makeup of Jack Bech. He is a really tough player, contested catch guy, not like an elite separator by any means on the outside. I don't think Juju ever was. Put him against zone defense, put him in the slot, let him make tough catches, let him make plays after the catch. Sneaky great at doing that. Middle comp, I have Mohamed Sanu. Mohamed Sanu, I think, was kind of like a Walmart version of Juju. Another tough guy, relatively athletic. You can use him in a versatile number of ways, but never really developed into a fantasy number 1. And then my flop comp was Zach Pascal, another possession receiver who like was a steady wide receiver 4 on whatever team he was for a long time. And at points he was called up to be like the wide receiver 2 and he was serviceable for his team. But that is a route that Jack Bech could end up being is just like a normal possession receiver like Allen Lazard, maybe in that frame. All right, so those are my top 24 rookie rankings overall. If you missed video 1 through 12, that'll be the first one in the show notes. If you're not subscribed yet, of course, hit the button, put the D in the subscribe button, hit the button that looks like this down below. We'll be putting out Dynasty and rookie content, almost every day for the next 2-ish months. We've got the NFL draft coming up, so we'll make sure that we do a bunch of rookie mock drafts right after the draft happens so that you guys can kind of stay in check with your rookie drafts. All right, that's all I got for you. Thank you for hanging out today. Smoochies.